What's going on, guys? It's going to be our Summary Markets Week 87. As always, we're going to get into our options watch list after that. We're going to get started with SPY. SPY last week had a little bit of chop towards the beginning of the week, but then we had a nice gap up on Thursday. Sadly, Thursday got sold off pretty hard towards the end of the day, and then you had a sell signal come in on the OTS trail, and you also could not reclaim the 50-day. So a little bit of weakness, kind of looking like a lower high in a downtrend. Then Friday had a little bit of confirmation on that gravestone of Thursday. We kind of broke the low of Thursday and started to push into that gap. So a little worrying there. One level I would pay a lot of attention to next week is this like 435 area where that gap fill is from Wednesday. We very easily could pull back to fill that gap and then push higher. So I would say any price movement down to 435 wouldn't be too bearish. We could just be going for a gap fill. And then once that gap has been filled, we are safe to move higher, okay? If we don't fill the gap, the biggest resistance you want to watch for is 442 and 444. Once we're above 444, there's not a whole lot of resistance. You have a little bit kind of in that area where we topped out before. Like right around the 447 area has a very strong kind of support and resistance flip there. But besides that, you should be able to get to all-time high pretty easily, okay? If we fill the gap and then still show weakness below that gap, I would say anything below the monthly VWAP, below like 433.60, would be bearish, and then you could go down to 429 or even 422, all right? Qs is basically the same story, a little bit of weakness on Thursday and then showed more weakness on Friday. As long as we stay below the 50-day and the monthly VWAP, below like 370, we are slightly bearish. If you can get above 372, then you would be leaning more towards the bull side, and you don't really have a whole lot of resistance except for like 379 leading up into all-time high. Now, moving forward, you want to watch out for that gap fill down to like 360. If we trade below that, you're going to be looking for like 355, maybe even 342. Moving on to gold, nothing really happening, still showing weakness, still consolidating. Any form of value found below like 1750 would be pretty bearish going down until the 1713 or even 1673. If it breaks above the 200 EMA, above 1800, then I'd be a little bullish going into 1860. Moving on, oil is still outperforming, still doing very well, breaking into the high as we discussed last week. Broke the 77 resistance, pulled back to retest it, and now we're pushing higher. So one thing we could do, let's go ahead and get rid of this. We could grab a fib from this recent move here. And now we can say as long as it stays above 79, we should be getting 84 to 85, okay? If we pull back, there still is this very strong uptrend around 77 that should hold us up. Looking at USD Jpy, the dollar looks pretty strong here, breaking out of the pivot around 112, and then showing a very strong kind of engulfing candle pushing that pivot. The weekly looks really strong as well, breaking pretty much all the highs of 2021 and almost all the highs of 2020 as well. So this is a 2-year high approaching a 3-year high if we're able to break 114. The dollar looks very strong here. If we can hold above 111, I think you're going to eventually move to 114 on the longer time scale. Moving on to Bitcoin. Bitcoin hit pretty much all of our targets. Let me go back to our other chart where we had our levels. So looking at Bitcoin here, if you guys read the newsletter or you watched the weekly watch list, I gave you guys targets of 50,200, 52.7, and 55.8. All three of those targets have been hit. If we can hold above 55.8, then you want to be looking for 60,900. If you can get above that, then you want to be looking for 63.3. Okay. If we fail this level around 55.8, then we might pull back to the pivot around 52.7. But as long as we can hold above that level, it should be a bullish pullback. If you pull back deeper than 52.7, then I would be looking for that 50,200 to act as support. Okay. Moving on to Ethereum, I believe I have Ethereum charted on this other one as well. Let's see. No, we can go back to this one actually. So Ethereum here, the big level as support is right around 3,400. If we can hold 3,400, this looks like a pretty bullish pullback. The problem is this is a perfect fractal where you have the high and then lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. So we have a 5-candle fractal here, which is a pretty strong topping pattern. So if we can't bounce off like 34.40, maybe even 33.50, this is pretty bearish here. But even if we do pull back to like say 32.60, this whole area right here should be a pretty strong buying opportunity. So as long as we hold above the monthly VWAP, above like 3,300, you should be slightly bullish, okay? And the next target I would look for, let's grab a fib for this. The next target would be 3,800. Hold above that, you should get 42. All right. That was the summary of markets. Make sure if you guys, there we go. Make sure if you guys like the content to hit that like button. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. We are going to move on to our options watch list, so stick around. The watch list today is pretty much the same as last week. I added a few names that were hitting my scanners last week, but for the most part, it's mainly just the oil plays that I mentioned last week, Murphy Oil and Marathon Oil. These two are destroying our targets. I think our first target on Murphy was around 28, and that's already being broken. So once we break above the current high, you're looking at like 30 to 32. If you pull back, anywhere from 28 to 27 is pretty strong support. What is this one? Marathon as well. We were looking at like 15 to 16. Those are already hit. So if you can break out of like 1650, look for 17, maybe 17 and a quarter. We can go ahead and pull up a fib here to kind of show you their levels. But yeah, like 18 here would be a big fib level, but you really got to get above like 16 and a quarter, okay? Any pullback down into like $15 would be fairly bullish. Another one that I added was this good RX. I like the way that I was pulling back to retest the 200 EMA. It's getting a little bearish, so I would like to see a bounce off the 200 EMA as soon as possible. But if this can bounce off the 200 here and kind of break this range high, I think this looks really good to put in a new high, because I've seen this pattern many times before where we're kind of downtrending since we IPO'd, but then the 200 EMA gets formed, we bounce above it, pull back to retest it, and then we go on a nice little uptrend. So keep an eye on this. If we can hold above like 40, basically where it is now, I think this could definitely bounce and go for a really nice move into 50, or then even to the all-time high around 64. Okay. Next up is Boeing. I really like this price action on Boeing. We have a nice little downtrend break here, and then even pulled back to retest it with two little dojis. So if we can break above these dojis, break above like 229, we should be able to get this local high kind of around 236, and then we also have the VWAP around 245. Next up is Snow. We've been watching this one for some weeks now. I took it off the watch list and I re-added it. I still like it a lot here. It just has to break above this 325, and then the close target would be 343, and then the farther out target would be around 393. Okay, I wouldn't take this as a pullback trade. You could if it pulled back to the pivot, but I would really like this to break this high around 325. Next up is Dulingo. This had a near perfect retest of the monthly VWAP around 135.50, and then we had a beautiful bounce all the way up into the previous month VWAP, which was 172. If we can break above 172, this should be able to fill the gap around, what is that, 189. And then if we break above that, you should be able to get an all-time high. Very nice reaction to the retest of the IPO. So we have the IPO here, retesting it beautifully along with the monthly VWAP. So very, very strong. Buy pressure there on the lows. Now we just need to see the buyers come in on the highs. All right, moving on. We're still watching PayPal, but it's in a downtrend here. You really need to see it break the downtrend, break above like 275. Then you should be able to get around 300. CCJ, I'm still selling the 20 puts. I'm selling the 20 puts for Friday. So hopefully this can stay above 20 by Friday. If not, we are probably going to have to buy the shares, obviously, because of the premium. And then we will flip that into selling calls. So we'll kind of we'll run a reel on that. Moving on, MGM, I added this to my long-term portfolio. I like the way we're breaking out of this kind of 44 area. I like the way the weekly is setting up for a move. I think this could possibly be a fake out, and it could pull back down to like 40, maybe even 38. So I did leave a lot of room to add on my long-term shares, and I will add all the way down to the 200 EMA. Typically, when I take long-term positions, I do not buy them below the 200 EMA. So if we do pull back, 38 will be the area where I stop adding, and then we'll probably stop loss like kind of below 34, somewhere down here. But I will happily add around this distribution, looking for a breakout into like say 50, maybe 55. All right, moving on to big tech. We did hit our local targets that I gave you guys last week. If you can break above 296, we should be able to get a gap fill into 298, and then we should be able to hit 300 pretty easily. We do also have a little gap below us at 293. Break below that, you could get 289. Moving on with Apple, I think if you can break 145, you should be able to get 148, excuse me. If you break below 142, then I would be looking for around 139. These are all like targets for this week, by the way, for up until Friday. If we break above 337 on Facebook, I would be looking for the gap fill around 341. And then there's also a pivot at 345. Let me actually make this dotted so we don't get confused. So 345 would be the upper target for that. Oh, sorry. And then on the way down, if we break below the 200 EMA, I would probably be looking for somewhere around 316. Netflix hit all of our targets here. We hit our 630 and our 643. If it could break above like 650, I would look for 660 and then 687 as like the big breakout target. If you break below like 627, I would be looking for 613 on that pivot. Amazon, you could go for a lower gap fill here around, what is that, 3261. Break below that, you could get 3200. If you break above the pivot around 3331, you should be able to get the OTS trail around 3350 as the easy target, and then farther out around 3427, excuse me. Last but not least, Tesla, still kind of bullish distribution here, kind of putting in higher highs, but still distributing. If you can stay above 781, break above 800, look for 824. If you break below 770, look for 753. All right. All right, guys, that was the summary of markets. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you liked the video. I will be seeing you guys tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for our stream. If you're in the Discord, I'll see you guys in the morning at 9:30 a.m. See you guys.